She seems to me to have such a great head on her shoulders, and she credits you for that.
I'm proud of her.
How much behind-the-scenes wrestling do you guys do?
Oh, plenty. I'm not gonna say we don't. You have your mother-daughter relationship. You know, obviously, you're gonna have ups and downs.
For years, Hayden Panettiere's family kept the hardest parts of her life private. But after her death, her mother is finally speaking out, and what she has revealed is leaving fans with more questions than answers. Behind the actress known for Nashville was a woman who faced struggles that many people never fully saw. Her family watched her fight through painful moments, difficult choices, and personal battles that stayed mostly behind closed doors. Now, her mother says there are things about Hayden's life that the public never understood, and one detail in particular may change the way people remember her story. So what really happened to Hayden Panettiere? Why did her family stay silent for so long? And what is her mother finally ready to reveal? Hayden Panettiere became famous at a young age. Millions of people knew her face. They watched her on television, followed her career, and saw her become one of Hollywood's familiar stars. But fame only showed one side of Hayden's life. Behind the cameras, T was dealing with personal struggles that were much harder to understand. Her role on Nashville made her even more popular. Fans watched her play Juliet Barnes, a talented singer whose life was filled with success, heartbreak, and difficult choices. In many ways, the character's story felt strangely close to Hayden's own life. As the years passed, Hayden's personal struggles became harder to keep private. Her family watched her go through painful moments, while the public often saw only headlines and rumors. And for a mother, watching your child struggle while millions of strangers judge them can be heartbreaking. Hayden's mother, Lesley Vogel, has remained protective of her daughter throughout the years. She knew there were parts of Hayden's story that the public simply did not know. There were private conversations, there were difficult decisions, and there were moments when the family had to put Hayden's well-being ahead of everything else. That is why her mother's voice carries so much weight now. Because when someone close to a celebrity finally speaks, the story can look very different from the version people saw in the news. For years, Hayden's fans wondered what was really happening behind the scenes. Was she getting the support she needed? Did people misunderstand what she was going through? And how much did her family actually know? Those questions became even more painful after Hayden's death. Suddenly, the things people once debated online were no longer just celebrity gossip. They became part of the story of a real woman whose family was left to grieve. And now, her mother is looking back at those years with a perspective that only a parent could have. But there is one thing that makes this story especially emotional. Hayden's mother wasn't just watching a celebrity struggle, she was watching her daughter, and that changes everything. For days, Hayden Panettiere's death left fans trying to understand what had happened. But then, her mother, Lesley Vogel, finally spoke publicly, and her words immediately brought a much deeper story into focus. Vogel described Hayden as incredibly talented, but she also talked about something that had followed her daughter for years: the difficult reality of growing up in the entertainment industry. Hayden had been working since she was a child. She grew up in front of cameras, surrounded by fame, pressure, and expectations that most children never experience. But her mother's comments suggested that the problems Hayden faced were not simply about Hollywood success. There were personal struggles too. And one of the most painful parts of the story was the relationship between Hayden and her own mother. Earlier in 2026, Hayden had openly acknowledged that she and Lesley were no longer close. She said she still left the door open for them to reconnect someday, but that chance never came. Hayden died at just 36 years old. Now her mother is left looking back at a relationship that was already complicated before the tragedy. And then came the part of Vogel's statement that shocked many people. She directly raised concerns about Brian Hickerson, Hayden's on-again, off-again boyfriend, who was with her when she died. Her family had reportedly been worried about his place in Hayden's life for a long time. That made Vogel's first public comments much more than a simple tribute. They opened the door to questions about Hayden's final years, the people around her, and the struggles her family believed she was facing. But there is something even more heartbreaking. Hayden's mother was speaking about these problems after it was already too late to change anything. And what happened between Hayden, her mother, and the people closest to her may explain why this family remained silent for so long. But then the story took another turn. As more details about Hayden's final hours began to come out, her mother started questioning what really happened. Brian Hickerson was at the South Carolina apartment when Hayden was found unresponsive. His brother Zach was also there, and the police report says emergency responders attempted CPR before Hayden was pronounced dead. At first, the public only had a few details, but Hayden's mother was not satisfied. Lesley Vogel began questioning the timeline Brian gave about what happened that day. She also questioned why Narcan was present and whether the story being told about Hayden's final moments completely made sense. These are her allegations and questions, not established findings by investigators, and that is where the story became even more complicated. Because Vogel had already spent years worried about Brian's relationship with her daughter. She believed he was a harmful influence in Hayden's life and said the family had tried to get him out of her life. Now, after Hayden's death, her mother was looking back at that relationship with an entirely different level of fear and regret. But there was another painful truth. Hayden and her mother had been estranged before her death. Earlier in 2026, Hayden had spoken about their difficult relationship and said she still hoped the door could someday open between them. That meant Vogel was not simply grieving the loss of her daughter. She was grieving a daughter she had already been separated from. And now, with Hayden gone, there would be no chance to have that conversation, no chance to ask for answers, no chance to fix what had been broken. But the biggest question was still waiting. If Hayden's mother had been worried about the people around her for so long, why couldn't she reach her daughter before it was too late? And the answer takes us back to the painful relationship between Hayden and the woman who raised her. But there was another part of Hayden's story that made everything even more painful. Her mother was not close to her when she died. For years, Hayden and Lesley Vogel had a complicated relationship. And after Hayden's death, Vogel made it clear that their distance was not because she stopped loving her daughter. She said she believed a toxic person had played a major role in keeping them apart. That statement changed the conversation, because suddenly, this was not only a story about a Hollywood star, it was a story about a mother who lost her daughter while they were still estranged. And Vogel was facing something no parent ever wants to face, knowing there were things left unsaid. There had been chances to reconnect. There had been hope that the relationship could someday become better. But Hayden's death meant those chances were gone. At the same time, Vogel continued pointing toward Brian Hickerson. She said her family had been concerned about him for years and believed he was a harmful influence in Hayden's life. She also questioned parts of the accounts surrounding Hayden's final hours. But it is important to understand that these are Vogel's allegations and suspicions. Authorities have said there were no signs of foul play, and the investigation into Hayden's death is still ongoing. That uncertainty is exactly what makes this story so difficult. One side is asking questions. Another side is asking everyone to wait for the investigation. And in the middle of it all is Hayden's family, trying to understand how a woman they loved could be gone so suddenly. Her mother has now chosen to speak. Not because the pain is gone, but perhaps because staying silent became even harder. And then came the backlash. Some people questioned why Vogel was talking about the painful parts of Hayden's life so soon after her death. Others believed a grieving mother had every right to tell her side of the story. Vogel pushed back against the criticism and defended her decision to speak publicly. But there was still one question nobody could easily answer. If Hayden's mother had been worried about her for so long, could anything have been done differently? And that question may be the most painful part of Hayden Panettiere's story. And now Hayden's story has reached a painful point. Her mother is speaking, the police are investigating, and fans are still waiting for answers. Hayden Panettiere died on August 16, 2026, at just 36 years old.